Okay, we're up to Yud Aleph and Aleph, but we have to loose ends on Yud Gimel. We're speaking about being kaveya, which year something is linya meiser. Nafkamina would be like going from a second Shemitah cycle year to a third Shemitah cycle year. The second year would be considered Maisa on Sheni, and the third year Maisa Ani. So we said the Indian trees, we go after Chanata, you go after when it blooms. And the Rosh Hashanah for that is Machloikas Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. When it comes to Tfuah, which is the Raisa, with Dagon, Tirash, Yitzhar, we said you go after the Shlish. Al Tikri Shalosh Shanim El Shlish, the third year. You have the third. We saw another opinion by vegetables, which is the Rabbanon. The Chachamim, as we're going to see, go after Lakita. They go after when you go ahead and you gather it in. And we'll see why Bez Hashem on the Yom Aleph today. We had these spices, these different things that you go after Hashrasha. We want to know where you go after Hashrasha. Right? We said because when you go ahead and put them, if you go ahead and make them, they crumble, they come together, and you have a problem being tiring one or the other. We said a pul mitzri, you bought a Mishnah, pul mitzri is type of grain that you planted for its purpose, that you can go ahead, make one another, and make a cholent out of it and mix it together. And we hold yesh bila. So why don't we go ahead and have that? So we said that Chachamim didn't allow, that was ein bila. So let's start from Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Amar Shmuel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines to the bottom. Amar Shmuel, Alacha Rabbi Yossi ben Kipar, Shami Rishon Rabbi Shimon Shizui. That you can go ahead and mix it together, because what are you doing? By mixing together the grains from this year and last year, the Pula Mitzri, what's going to happen is when you do separate it, you can be separating from both because it mixes well. So you'll have an equally distribution. So when you go ahead and separate, you'll be separating the Chodesh part and the Chodesh part and the Yashan part on the Yashan part. That's what we saw yesterday. Maskala Rabbi Zera, Freg Rabbi Zera Kasha. Umiya Mishmul Hachi, does Rabbi Shmuel hold like Rabbi Shimon Shizuri, which Mashmi holds, Yesh Bila, that it mixes well. V'Amar Shmuel says, L'chol ein Bila, for everything there is no Bila, Chutz mi Yayin v'Shemen. Yayin v'Shemen, which are liquids, so when you mix them together, of Chodesh and Yashan, you'll have an equal distribution, so that if you separate, you'll be representative in the separation of both the Yashan and the Chodesh part. Mashen came with it's pul mitzri, which is a substance, right? Then it can zayin, you'll have roiv or one or the other, and there won't be a good distribution. Then there won't be a good separation. So we have a problem. On one hand, Shmuel said Allah is like a Shimon Shizuri, that you could separate the pul mitzri. On the other hand, he holds ein bila. So it's a problem because the whole svara of Shimon Shizuri was yesh bila, that you do have an equal distribution. So the Gemara answers, it slipped away from Rabbi Zera, who asked the kasha, Hadam Shmuel hakol ho'lechacha gemar pri. Guess what? Shmuel does not hold of you go after Hashrasha. He doesn't go after you go after Hashrasha. He goes after the gemar pri when the pri is finished. So with the gemar pri over here, even by kitnius, you go after the gemar pri, and you don't go after Hashrasha, right? And when he said the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shizuri, it's not because he held that you have Yashan and Chadash mixed together and it equally distributed. It's because you have all Chadash or all Yashan whenever the Gemara Pri was. Let's see Rashi, guys. Look at Rashi. 3 lines to the bottom. And Shmuel says, even by the Pul Mitzri, we don't go after the time it took root. We don't go after that. V'chi Amar Shmuel Allah Reb Shimon Shizuri. When the Shmuel said Allah like Reb Shimon Shizuri, Loi Mitramei Kamar. He agrees with him in the psak halacha, but he arrives at it for a totally different reason. He doesn't, nothing to do with bila and equal distribution. It's because it was 1 year, right? The il Reb Shimon Shizuri time of mishum bila, because it mixes well. The time of the Shmuel mishum the kula chadashu. It's all chadash. It's all of the same. So memela kishigidol v'nigmar achar Rosh Hashanah. When it grows and it goes after Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so let's just chaz riba. Harold, are you dressed for learning Torah? Oh, wait. Anyway, the Chalapachas. I'm glad he's muted. So we're saying a halacha that the pul mitzri you'll be able to separate one from the other, but not because the halacha is like Shimon Shizuri that you can mix it together yesh bila, and because you have mixed of Yashan and Chadash. It's because Shmuel is a whole different reason. Shmuel holds because why? Because you have a Gemar Pri. You have a Gemara Pri, so it's all Chodesh. It's all 1 year. You don't go after the time it takes root. So you have a little rooted over here before Rosh Hashanah and a little rooted over after Rosh Hashanah. Because the Gemara Pri takes place at the same time. So it takes place what? Afterwards. What is Geshmak? Why Shmuel would hold by Pul Mitzvah, you can go ahead and separate them all together. So Shmuel said 3 dinim. 1, he said the halach is like Shemesh and Zuri. 2, he said Ein Bila, only by Yain V'Shemen. And 3, the halacha by Kitnius is you go after what? You go after Hashrasha. You go after Gemar Pri. Okay? Now the Gemara wants to know why you say all 3 things. Again, guys, get it clear. 3 things. 1, the halacha is like Shemesh and Zuri, that you can go ahead and mix it together and separate. 2, Ein Bila, it doesn't mix well except Shem and V'Yayin. And 3, by legumes, by Kitnius, you go after the Gemar Pri. B'tzrich, you need to tell me all 3 of them. If you just told me that Allah is Shimon Zuri, you would think because he holds it's Chodesh and Yashin mixed together, but it mixes well, and therefore, since it mixes well, when you go ahead and separate it, you have an equal distribution and representation of what's there in between the two, the mixture. Kamash Malon l'chol ein bila. Kamash Malon, there's no bila. V'yashmin l'chol ein bila havamina kirabanon svirlei. I would think that he holds like the Rabbanon, that you can't separate it, right? That if you separate you can't separate the Pul Mitzvah from each other. That you could separate it from each other. V'yashmina and Hani Tarti, like the Ein Bila and the Allah like Shimon Zuri, have a mina kasha the Shmuel. You'd be schwer. Shmuel says one place the Allah Shimon Zuri that yesh bila, and the other place he holds Ein Bila. So l'chayra it would be a steer minay and bay. Again, he says Allah Shimon Zuri mashmi yesh bila. On the other hand, he says Ein Bila. So if those are the only 2 statements you had, you'd be mixed up. You wouldn't know the Gemar Pri, right? You think Bila, Ein Bila, it'd be a stira. Therefore, Kamash Malana kol al Gemar Pri. The reason why is you go after Gemar Pri. I would say even Dagam V'Zeisim. Now we know there you go after the Shlish, guys, right? There's a third of its growth. Again, this is the Raisa. This is a third of its growth. Again, I can't repeat this enough. All these shiurim we're giving, Ashrasha, this is all after Chachamim. Masha Enkein by Truma Ma'aser Deraisa, which is Dagam Tirash for Yitzhar. There we're going to go after the pasuk that says, for Asta Esatfuash L'Shalosh Hashanim. It's going to make L'Shalosh Hashanim. And we said, Al Tikrish L'Shalosh El Shlish. This was a limud. It wasn't an asmachta. This is the rice to take a source for a third of its growth. And here we're just discussing the Chacham came up with these ideas, right? Different thing. So if you would say everything goes after the Gemara Pri, I would have thought even Tful and Zaysim, which the rice go after the Gemara Pri. Kamash Malon, then no. Halacha Gam Shimon Zazuri. The halacha Shimon Zazuri that what? You can mix it together and go. Why? Because you go after Gemara Pri. Says Gemara, the halacha like Shimon Zuri in that they argue. Ulashmin and Hani Tarti, right? List these 2. List the halacha of Shimon Zuri and go after Gemara Pri. Guys, listen. The problem, if you list Shimon Zuri alone, you're going to say the time is bila. So you say the other thing, Hakol Holachach Gemara Pri. Yeah? So then why do you need to tell me Ein Bila? I would know Ein Bila. Once you told me you go after the Gemara Pri, I know the reason why Shimon Zazuri is not Bila, because you just said Ein Bila, right? So again, you didn't, because you said you go after the Gemara Pri. By saying you go after the Gemara Pri, Memela Ein Bila. So why do you have to tell me Ein Bila? I mean, we said 3 things again, right? Ein Bila El B'Shemen V'Yayin. Why do you have to tell me that? Just tell me Allah is like Shimon Zazuri and tell me that you go after the Gemara Pri and I'd be cool. Says well, no. So Ein Bila HaKamash Malon. Here's the Chiddush. Till Yayin B'Shemen Yesh Bila. The Chiddush is not the Ein Bila part. The Chiddush is the Bila on the 2 other things. That even though I hold Ein Bila, by Yayin B'Shemen I hold Bila. Okay? New Gemara. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Agludi says, the pasuk says, "V'as b'cha migoncha miyakvecha." Okay, we had this. Now this main part of the pasuk, guys, is to teach me what schach. Right? This is one thing you're gonna walk away with Masechta Sukkah. This is the pasuk that teaches me schach is what it's from junk. It's not from a eichel. It's not from a food. It's from the junk, and so therefore it's not makabel tuma. Food is makabel tuma, and B, it's something that grows from the ground. So ba'asbecha, from your soilus of yekev, of your threshing floors, and megoncha, your threshing floors, or yekev, and your wine press, that's what we're going to get now. The rest of the Gemara, guys, and that's a smachta, because this is only truma d'Rabbanan. So we're finding the Chachamim said a din, and they found a support, a smach in the Torah. This is not like shlish. This is mamish and asmachta. Because again, the main pasuk, as we just said, is what? Is for schach. Take a look at the little Taisus, guys. Ma goyim v'yekev, asmachta ba'alma, the ma'aseh yerek the rabbanon. So you do not need a pasuk for it. V'ikar kra l'psoilis goyim v'yekev k'delel l'inyan sukkah. Okay, so that's the okay. Back in the Gemara. Tanya Rabbi Yosef Gilui Omer. Ba'as b'cha migarchem yekvecha ma goyim v'yekev miuchadim shegedilin al mei shana. They grow on the water that landed that year. Sha'avra, that passed. Umis asrin l'shana sha'avra. And you take off Maisa from the past year. We assume that that's when they grew their shlish. Right? Af kol shegedilin al mei shana. So too, everything that grows on the water from that year, sha'avra, mis asrin l'shana avra. You take Maisa off based upon the last year. Whether it's second year, it'll be a Maisa ani. Third year, it'll be a Maisa. Second year, Maisa sheni. Third year, Maisa ani. Yatsu Yerakais Shegedilin al Meishana. This would exclude Yerakais. So in other words, the first part's including trees, guys. The trees that the sap in the tree is after the water's gone. The sap goes in the tree. So therefore, that the trees that formula that Rabbi Yosef Yehuda just gave you is for what trees? It's for trees that you're going to go after when the water was in and it created the sap in the tree. Mashenkin Yerakais Shegedilin al Meishana haba. The Yerakis guys, you need to water them all the time. You need to water them all the time. Rashi points out something fascinating. If once it grows a third of its growth, but once the sap is used in the tree, if you cut it, it's not going to regenerate. On the other hand, since you always irrigate Yerakis, if you cut it before it reaches maturity, it'll regenerate. So therefore, you see, it's the water that's the main thing, and that's why. So that's the svara why they went after Lakita, guys. Why do you go after Lakita? Because since it grows on water, you have to water it all the time. It's not going to go ahead and you cut it, it would grow anyway. So last year, they don't go after last year. Once it's picked, it's gone. Because that's the point in time where all the water that you went is like used up in the thing. Because earlier than that, if you rewater it, it would grow again. So obviously, if it's growing again, it's not a gemar. Okay, so that's the svara of Yerakis for the rest of Shas. This is the svara of Yosef Yehuda. Rabbi Akiva Omer, similar but different. Similar but different. Then we'll contrast the two. Omer the pasuk says, when you gather in what? Your goyrin and your yekev, your threshing floor and your winepress. Ma goyrin v'yekev miyuchadim shegedilim al roiv mayim. They grow by roiv mayim means rain. Roiv mayim means rain. Umis asun l'shana sha'avra, and they go after the past year. Af kol shegedilin al roiv mayim, so to anything that grows al roiv mayim, mis asun l'shana sha'avra. So yotza yerakos shegedilin al kol mayim. They grow by all water, meaning even mayim shuvim, even irrigated water. And as I told you, you have to irrigate them all the time. Umis asun l'shana haba. Okay, so Rabbi Yosef Yehuda said. It goes after when the rain stops, which point in time the rain from the water from the past, the water from now, and Rabbi Akiva says goes after. Rabbi Akiva goes after whether it's rainwater or mayim shuvim. My binayu. Why would the nafkamina be between Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says you go after the water, and Rabbi Akiva says you go after whether it's rainwater or irrigated water. Amravo, it's Salem hasarisim, it's Salem that are eunuchs, they don't have zera in it, or they don't, if you in a moist area, the Rambam says they won't grow, the leaves won't grow. Upula mitzri, that it could be nice. That would be the difference. In other words, guys, we're going to quote a Mishnah, and we're going to see there's two ways to learn Pshat in the Mishnah. Ditnan, it's Salem hasarisim, onions that are saris, they're eunuchs. Upula mitzri, shemona mehem mayim shloishim yoyim. They would hold back water for 30 days. This seems to be, it would harden the fruit. It seemed to be a good to harden the vegetable. But so that they hold back 30 days of water. By holding it back, you're gaining, it's going to harden. It seems to make it a better onion or a better bean. Lefnei Rosh Hashanah, 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, misasrin l'sha'avar. Then it's going to go, Maisa will be, whether it's the second year, it'll be Maisa Sheni, third year Maisa Ani. Umutarim b'shvius, and if the next year is the Shemitah year, it's already considered finished. It's not the Perish Shvius and it'd be Mutta. Vim lav. But if you didn't stop the water, you kept on watering it all the time, then asur mishvias will be us in the Shemitah year, u'misasun l'shana haba. Now, this Mishnah is the nafkamina between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. The question is, who holds what? So we have two pshatim. According to the first pshat, Rashi says, Ikibinayev, says Rashi, Kigoin, Shemona mehemayim v'lei hishku, shleishim yom v'lei Rosh Hashanah. You held back water, you didn't irrigate it 30 days before. V'loktan achar Rosh Hashanah, but you gathered it in after Rosh Hashanah. V'chihodim masnisan ditnan, and we just quoted that Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi Aglili islei ha masnisan. He would agree with the Mishnah. Why? The kim in the mona mayim shleishim yom v'lei Rosh Hashanah, since you held back water, nimnu gedilim al meishana shavra. So what completed the crop? Obviously the water from the past. Good. Since the water from the past completed it, then it would go after the crop from the past. Mashenkin of Akiva, he says, 1 second, you go after what type of water? Since this grows, I'll make geshamim, I'll kol mayim, which is irrigated. So even if you go ahead and withhold water, it won't make a difference, according to this lashon. Rabbi Akiva, hari gedilim al kol mayim. Rabbi Akiva, it goes after kol mayim, after all the irrigation. And you would go after what? You go after lahaba. So again, this is the first pshat. The second pshat is the opposite. Rabbi Akiva holds that since you're holding back water, it becomes a stable. It doesn't become yerakos, and that you would treat it like a grain. So there's two ways to learn. So that's the nafkamina between the two is this Mishnah in the second parak in Masechta Shvius, Mishnah Tes. According to the first pshat, Rabbi Yossi Aglili would agree with the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva would disagree. According to the second pshat, Rabbi Akiva would agree with the Mishnah, and Rabbi Yossi Aglili would disagree. Okay, for those who came just now, we're up to Yud Dalet Amid Aleph, about 5 months in the bottom of the two dots. The Mishnah said that when is Rosh Hashanah for Ilonos, for the trees, meaning Le'inyan Meiser, you're going to take off. When's the dividing line that one goes that year and one goes the next year? Machloikis Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says on Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and what we pass on Beis Hillel, of course, the 15th day of Shvat, better known as Tu B'Shvat, better known as the days in yeshiva in a paper bag. You got a piece of baksa that if you bite would break all your teeth. And it taught you that baksa was something that was a dava mayasad ma'od because it had an odor to it. There was nothing good about it. Nothing good about baksa. Zero. It was like I couldn't believe Eliyahu Navi survived on that. Little did I know that that's not what baksa was. Now, my timer. What's the reason? Omer of Alaza, Omer of Aishia, Hoil v'yotzeroiv gishmei shana. Most of the water has already finished. So Rashi brings that since most of the water is finished, the sap in the tree that's going to cause the chanata is in place. So all the factors that you need for the fruit are already there. Therefore, that's the Rosh Hashanah. Since most of the water is done and the sap is in the tree, that's the Rosh Hashanah. Now, it's a very funny lashon. Most of the kufas of Teves, Adar, and right, Teves, Adar, Shvat Adar, Teves, Shvat Adar is to come, right? So the is 3, and still most of it to come. Mashma, since you have most of it to come, it's considered Rosh Hashanah. Adar Rabbah, I would say since you have most of it to come, it's not Rosh Hashanah, right? It makes no sense. Guys, anytime the Gemara says "My Ka'amar," you have to ask yourself, what was strange about the language that we just used? You know, it's like I always teach you Amamar Gufa, I'm teaching you in learning. When the Gemara says "My Ka'amar," it means, what did you just say? So listen to what we just said. Why did we just say? Why is it in Shvat? Why is it in Shvat? It's the reason Shvat is most of the water is there, and you have most of the season to go. If you have most of the season to go, why is it early in the season? It should be later in the season, if anything, right? So the Gemara wants to know right away, my kama, what? What do you do one with the other? So hachi kama, here's the way you read it. Most of the water is there, and here these words. Afal pi sheroiv tekufa mevechotz, even though you still have most of the time of Shvat and Adar to go. Nonetheless, since the majority of the rain season's been over, still you go after Shvat, and you don't wait to the end of Shvat and Adar. You don't wait to Adar. That's the way you learn. That Afal Pi changes everything. The Afalpi changes everything. In other words, just because I have more time to go, since Roiv of the water was done, which created the sap in the tree, already that's considered, that's the time you're going to go for Chanata, and therefore Shvat is the month. Now, Machlokes Beisham Beisil, okay. Torah Rabbana. Now we're going to apply this Machlokes. Torah Rabbana. Ma'aseh Rabbi Akiva. There was an incident with Rabbi Akiva. We're going to have this Bez Hashem in Yevamis, guys. That's where I remember this from. Yevamis. It's around the corner. Batten down the hatches. Ma'aseh Rabbi Akiva. Shelikei Esrig be'echad b'Shvat. He went ahead. He was malaket. He gathered the Esrig on b'Shvat. Now, guys, so two things right away. What is Esrig? Is it a fruit or is it a yerek? If it's a fruit, you're going to go after Chanata. If it's a yerek, you're going to go after when you go ahead and malakate, when you gather it. Good? Secondly, on what day did he do it? On Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai ain't a Mishnah. So what Maisa that? Who cares about the first Shvat? First Shvat is Zichar of the year before. Zichar, right? So Maisa Rabbi Akiva Shalikit Esrog B'Echad B'Shvat V'Nog B'Shnei Isurim, and he was knowing two Isurim Echad Kidvrei Beis Shammai V'Echad Kidvrei Beis Hillel. So let's go through this. Let's just see what he just said. On the first day of Shvat, he went ahead. He picked a esrig, and it was in a second year that he picked it. Right? It was a second year going into a third year, and he kept two things. He kept that year. He kept what? He kept the year that that he kept Maisa Sheni, and he also kept Maisa Ani. He kept Sheni and he kept Maisa Ani. Rashi says, Maisa Sheni b'shana shniya, Maisa Ani b'shana shlisha shahoisa shniya nichnesas l'shish. There was two going to three, so he kept two. One like now, Mashmo, one like Beis Shammai, who said that he picked it after Rosh Chodesh, so it's already going into the third year. Like Beis Hillel, it's still the old year. So he kept two chumras, guys. One more time, outside. He's picking this on the first day of Rosh Chodesh, after Rosh Chodesh, right? According to Beis Shammai, that's the next year, because Rosh Chodesh is the cutoff point, right? So therefore, it's already the third year. It was two going to three. So he's keeping Maisa Ani like Beis Shammai. Conversely, he's keeping Maisa Sheni because it's before Tu B'Shvat. Since it's before Tu B'Shvat, it's the old year, it's the second year. So Beis Hillel makes it Maisa Ani, Maisa Sheni, and Beis Shammai makes it Maisa Ani. That's what happened, right? That's the mechanics of the Gemara, right? Maisa Ani, Maisa Sheni, and what the reason it's Maisa Sheni because it's before Tu B'Shvat, and the reason it's Maisa Ani is because it's Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So the Chayre, he's keeping Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Yeah, he's keeping Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says, "Loi minig Beis Shammai Beis Hillel noig." He's not keeping both. He's not keeping Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Ela minig Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Eliezer noig ba. He's keeping the minig of Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Eliezer. That nan esrik shava le'ilan begimel drachim. An ester is like an elon in three ways that you're going to go after chanata, guys. You're going to go after its blooming. Which ways? Uliyerek b'derech echad. Shava le'ilan begimel drachim. You may remember this from your Kedushin days. La'arla, u'ravoi, u'lishvius. If the chanata took place in second year, third year, that's going to go ahead and decide when it's arla. Fourth year, net ravoi. Shmita, converse again. Wherever it goes ahead and blooms, that will go ahead and decide those halachas. Uliyerek b'derech echad. How is an esrog like a yerek? Meaning you go after the kita. So when you pick it, wherever you pick it, that's what's going to be. No. Esrog shava le'ilan l'chal davar. An esrog is equal to ilan l'chal davar for everything. Now, so therefore, meaning afilu chanata, the esrog is a full-fledged tree. You do not go after the way it's picked, go after when it grew. So now, what would happen over here? What's the pshat over here? Look at Rashi. Loi minig Beis Shammai, 3 lines from the top. Shnei yisurim shenogba, lav mishum safek Beis Shammai safek Beis Hillel. El mishum safek halacha Rabbi Gamliel. The Amar esrig achal kita kierek. Mishum the darker legadol kamayim. An esrig, you have to go ahead and water it all the time. Since you have to irrigate it with water, it would have the din of a yerek, right? Every other tree grows upon rainwater, but you have to go ahead and provide more than rainwater for the esrig. That's why it would be like a yerek. And you picked it right in the 3rd year. And the chanata took place in the 2nd year. So since he didn't know which, okay, again we're going to ask on him. He went according to Beis Shammai because it said on Rosh Chodesh. Good. So very good. Outside, guys, look at me outside. We have a Maisa with Rabbi Akiva about an esrig that was picked on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and he kept Maisa Ani and Maisa Sheni. The Havamina was he kept Maisa Sheni like Beis Hillel because it was before Tu B'Shvat. He kept Maisa Ani because it was Rosh Chodesh like Beis Shammai. Says, well, no, that's not the Machloi. What he kept over here was since it was picked in after Rosh Chodesh. The shaila was, do you go after when it bloomed or do you go after when it's picked? He didn't know. So he was mesupik. So he kept Maisa Ani like Rabbi Gamliel when it was picked. He kept Maisa Sheni like Rabbi Eliezer because he went after Chanata. He went after when it bloomed. But nothing to do with Beis Hillel, right? Again, it has to do with Chanata or blooming when it was. That's the suffix. What we have to answer was still, if you're going after picking, it's still before 2. Since it's before 2, you got a problem because you're still going to say it's like Beis Shammai, which is problematic. Because again, like Beis Hillel, we need it. You have plenty of time. You got 2 weeks until 2. Says the Gemara inside. So that was the thing. The shaila was you didn't know to keep it. Did it keep it like Rabbi Eliezer or like Rabbi Gamliel? Fred the Gemara umi avdina ketrei chumri. Do you do like 2 chumris? Okay, outside. Let me give you the Gemara outside. You might remember this from Erevin. You have the mace is metama ba'oil. The body of the skeleton is metabel ma'oil in 1 or 2 ways. Roiv minyan, roiv binyan, or you have a shidra. You have a shidra, spines. A spine will be metama to misoil. Okay. Now, how many pieces from that spine have to be missing in order to be ice spine and it won't work? In other words, it won't be metamas to Messiah. Says Rabbi Akiva, says Beis Hillel, 1. Says Beis Shammai, 2. 1 vertebrae will do the job. If from the spine you're missing 1 vertebrae, it's not metamas to Messiah. If from the spine you're missing 2 vertebrae, then it won't be metama, but 1 it's still in metama. Nimsa, Beis Hillel is mekel, because he says it loses its ability to mekabel tuma only with 1 vertebrae, and Beis Shammai is machmir. 1, it's still metama, 2 not. So Beis Shammai would be machmir, Beis Hillel would be mekel. Conversely, if you go ahead and shecht an animal, and you want to know if the animal is a treifa, and you're checking the shidra, what would make it a treifa? If it's missing 1 vertebrae. Says Beis Shammai, 2 vertebrae. Comes out, what was a chumrah by Beis Shammai, by Shidra Linyan Tuma, is a kula by Treifa. Because by Treifa, it's still kosher until you have 2. What was a kula by Beis Hillel, by oil, that by losing 1 Shidra, it's ice oil, is a chumrah by Treifa, because once you're missing 1, it's a Treifa. So 1 scenario, 2 halachis. Now, here is where you're going to get a conflict. What happens if you do 2 things? What do? You know what? I'll say by oil, the halach is like Beis Hillel. I'll go ahead and say, go ahead, 1. However, by Shidra, I'll say the halach is like Beis Shammai, regarding a treifa. So you're being noig like both kulas. You're a Rasha. If you noig 1 kula, 1 chumrah, either one, you're good. If you do 2 chumras, you're a fool. If you do two chumas, in other words, you're a fool. I hold like Beis Hillel by treifa. I hold like Beis Shammai by what? By oil. Then you're a fool. So what's happening over here? Rabbi Akiva went like two chumas. To be machmir like Rabbi Eliezer, and to be machmir like Beis, and like Rabbi Gamliel. What's going on here? Okay, the Gemara says none of this. Everything I told you is in Rashi, but the Gemara alludes to it. And we did this in Eruvin. You might recall it from Eruvin, and we had another other place in Shas. I don't remember. Okay, it says the Gemara inside, probably in Chulin. Fred the Gemara. Umi avdinin ketrei chumri to keep Maisa Sheni and Maisa Ani. Vatanya lo'olam halacha k'divrei Beis Hillel. The halacha is like Beis Hillel. Roit Salas is k'divrei Beis Shammai Yosei. Somebody wants to do Beis Shammai, can do it. That seems to be a stira. If you tell me the halacha is based like Beis Hillel, how mineu bei can you tell me you can do like Beis Shammai? The Gemara in Eruvin says this is before the Baskol came out. Daf Yud Gimel, guys, you might remember the Baskol came out that even though Beis Shammai was macharif and everything, the halacha is like Beis Hillel because they were aniva, they were an onav, they were soft spoken. They always put Beis Shammai first. Mishum Beis Shammai, they always put it first. So you might remember that. Okay, so this was before the Baskol. That's why it says if you want to do like Beis Shammai, you can. Kidur Beis Hillel Loisa, Mikula Beis Shammai, Mikula Beis Hillel Rasha. If you do like the Kula Beis Shammai, the Kula Beis Hillel, you're a Rasha. You're a fool. So how can you do like two chumras over here? Did not mention anything whatsoever about the shidra. That's all in Rashi. But you needed to understand it, to really understand the meat of the Gemara. Excuse the pun. To understand the meat of the Gemara, to understand what I mean. You're playing two sides of the fence, right? In the same shaila, you're playing two sides of the fence. Then you can't do it. But you're machmir, you're a fool. So how in the world could Rabbi Akiva keep both? Ella ikebe shamai b'kuleim b'chumeim, ikebe sil b'kuleim b'chumeim. And for the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva gamre stapigle v'lo yoda ibe sil be'echa b'shvat, ibe tu b'shvat. Okay, one way out of it, guys. Very easy. He holds like Beis Hillel. He's not keeping two chumas. He didn't have a clear mesorah what Beis Hillel's psak was. After all, guys, it was Torah Shel Bapeh. One said Tu B'Shvat, one said Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Ken Zayin that what? He didn't know what Beis Hillel said. Since he didn't know what Beis Hillel says, he kept both ends. He kept Maisa Oni because of the time it was picked, and he kept the Tu B'Shvat because of why? Because again, maybe it's still the second year, and therefore he kept Maisa Sheni. So really, he's holding like Beis Hillel. It's not two chumas. He didn't know what Beis Hillel held. We know Beis Hillel held Tu B'Shvat. He thought maybe Tu B'Shvat, maybe Rosh Chodesh. So he kept both. That's one teretz to the kasha, to the dilemma. Another teretz. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda said, "Loi minig Beis Shammai Beis Hillel noigba, el minig Rabbi Gamliel v'Rabbi Eliezer noigba." Okay, Rabbi Gamliel says what? That Esther goes after Lakita, and Rabbi Eliezer says Esther goes after Chanota. Guys, we had a problem. Let's go back. What's the shaila? There was a ma'aser, Rabbi Akiva, on Rosh Chodesh Shvat. He took two ma'asers. Who did he hold like? Well, he held like Rabbi Akiva, like Rabbi Eliezer. That what? You go after Chanota. So when's Chanota? Right now. Right? The Chanota took place, and now maybe the Chanota took place before Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and therefore it's the second year, and therefore I'm chayav ma'aser sheni. Or you go after Lakita. Lakita is now on Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Who holds Rosh Chodesh Shvat? Beis Shammai. So what does Rabbi Akiva care about Shammai? Beis Shammai, we don't pass like Beis Shammai. So how could Rabbi Yosef Yehuda say that's the pshat? It doesn't make sense. Amar Rab Chanina, Vitem Rab Chananya. Some say it was Rab Chanina, others say it was Rab Chananya. Chacha be'esrig shechantu peirosav koidim tesvav. The idich shvar askina. You know what, guys? You know when an Esther could stay on a tree for 2 or 3 years. An Esther could stay on a tree for 2 or 3 years. He also like Beis Hillel. The Chanata and the Lakita. So the Chanata took place when? Before. And now the Lakita took place now. It's taken place Vav. It could have taken place Kislev. It could take place any other time. It didn't make a difference. This has been on the tree for a year. So the Chanata took place before Tesvav. The Chanata took place before Tesvav. Good? So therefore, I don't know. Maybe it's the second year like that. Now it stays on the tree an additional time, another year cycle, and now the Lakita takes place. The Lakita is taking place, right, on Aleph. Aleph is not according to Beis Shammai anymore because it's been on the tree for a year, right? And the Lakita could have taken place, guys, any time after Tesvav, and you still have the same Shaila. Then the Chanata took place in 1900. The Chanata took place 1900. 1901, after Tu B'Shvat passes, right? Now I get to 1902, and it's the first of Shvat, and he picks it. So it's not, you're not Chayv L'Kita because why? Because of Beis Shammai. It's been on the tree afterwards. It's after 2. It could be any other time. Why do you mention Rosh Chodesh Shvat? It says Maisa Rabbi Akiva. That's what happened to happen. But clearly, it's like Beis Hillel, and the Chanata took place in the second year. The Lakita took place in the third year after Tesvav, and therefore I have a problem. You'd have the same problem in Kislev any other month. It happened to be Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Double up like this. There's 2 machlokes in the matter. It wasn't Echad B'Shvat, it was 2 B'Shvat. It was 2 B'Shvat. Lo minig Beis Shammai Beis Hillel noig ba, ela minig Rabbi Eliezer noig ba. So in other words, you're telling me the way to learn Pshat in the Maisa was 2 ways. 1, it wasn't 2, it wasn't Aleph, it was 2, and 2, the machlokes wasn't between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The machlokes was between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel. Amar Rav Huna. Now you're telling me in Esrig goes after Lakita, Isura ki Esrig, ki Erik, Rosh Hashanah Shaloi Tishrei. First Mishnah, guys. Go back to the first Mishnah. Back. 4 line down. Echa b'Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah l'Shanim, u'Lishmita, u'Liyavlois, l'Netia, Uli Yerakos. Bechad B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah L'Ilan. Guys, if you're telling me the Esrig is Lakita, is like a Yerek, then the Rosh Chodesh Shaloi is not Shvat. The Rosh Chodesh Shaloi is Tishrei. In other words, you can't hybrid it. You can't say it's a fruit that's in Shvat, but you go after Lakita. Lakita is the Yerek, right? And since you need the Esrig, you need to go ahead and water it all the time. It has a din of a Yerek. Once it has a din of a yerek, we don't view it as a fruit anymore. We'll view it as a full-fledged vegetable. Therefore, you're going to go after Tishrei for it's Rosh Hashanah and not Shvat. Don't leave yet. Says the Gemara. If you go ahead and malakid an esrig erev tu b'shvat, actually tovay hashemesh before the sun goes down, because of malikek mishet tovay hashemesh, and then you do another one. After the Shemesh, ain't time in the Maisman Zelzel, if you ain't time in the Maisman, let me know Chadash Yashon, let me know Yashon Chadash. Guys, you got a problem, right? You just told me Tishrei. So why now you're telling me that the cutoff point is 2 B'Shvat, right? So obviously, the big question on Rava, right? Rava said Tishrei. Here we're speaking about what? Clearly, we're speaking 2 B'Shvat. Continues the Brisa. It's third going to the 4th year. Or Shlishis will be Ma'aser Rishon and Ma'aser Ani. Revius Ma'aser Rishon and Ma'aser Sheni. Amid Aleph. Man Shamet Lei Da'azal Basal Akita. Who told me you go after the way you gather it? Rabbi Gamliel. The Ketani Shvat. And we learned Shvat, not Tishrei. So that's very Shver and Rava who said Tishrei. Ella, you have to have Charata. Eliyit Mar Hachi Itmar. If you want to learn Pshat, here's what we have to learn. Amar Rava. Amar Rabba Barav Huna. Says Rabba Barav Huna. I kept on saying Rava. It was Rabba. I'm sorry. I kept on saying Rava. It's Rabba Barav Huna. So before Rabba Rav Huna wants to say it's Tishrei, let's change gears. Amar Rabba Rav Huna. Afagav the Amar Rabbi Gamliel. Esrig Achal Akita Kierek Kama Rosh Hashanah Shelo Yeshvat. Rosh Hashanah. Even though it's a Yerek Le'inyan Lakita Le'inyan Maisa, it's a tree. It's a fruit, which is the way you would understand it too. Now. Why do we say over here? We said if it's going to the 3rd year. Again on Daf Yomi Rosh Hashanah Aleph, we said it's 2 going into 3, right? Take a look at the bottom on page, you're based on an Aleph. Tan Rabbanan, 2 lines from the bottom. Liket Yereg Erev Rosh Hashanah, Achlei Tovei Hashemesh, V'chaz of a Liket Mishet Tovei Hashemesh, Ein Tarmin Umaisim Yizel Zel, if you say Ein Tarmin Umaisim, Loimin HaChadash Al Yasham, Loimin Yasham Al Chadash, Im Hoysa Shnia, Nechneses L'Shlishis, if it's 2 going to 3, Shnia is Ma'aser Rishon, Ma'aser Sheni, Shlish is Ma'aser Rishon, Ma'aser Ani. So over there, it's speaking by the Yerek, and we said 2 to 3. Over here by Esrig, we said 3 to 4. So, and we're speaking about the same thing, right? That the Rosh Hashanah, the point before, afterwards, there was Tishrei, over here it's 2, and we're going both ways. So, Fred the Gemara Kasha. Fred the Gemara, Im Hoysa Shnil Nechles L'Shlish, so Maishna Hacha, Iktani Im Hoysa Shlish Nechles L'Revius. Says, Milsav Agavruch Kamashmalon. The Esrig Kashale Yadei, an Esrig, the tree is very sensitive, really sensitive. And if people touch it all the time, but I did in Mashmish Bay Kuli Alma, since people are busy with it, the Shvius, and the Shemitah they touch it, like Toyim Peri at Klis Shanan. It's not going to give birth, you have to have it for 3 years. So it's going to be 3 going to 4. In other words, Linya Maisa and Achanam, you could have told me 2 going to 3. But why is it telling me the 3rd year of a Shemitah cycle? Because in the Shemitah cycle, this tree got so badly injured because people were touching it and it's so sensitive, it's not going to produce a fruit until the 3rd year. So that's why it said 3 to 4, not 2 to 3. I thank everyone for listening. Appreciate it very much.